It's time to talk taxes.
New friends, new opportunities, new partners. EG Tax.
It's Ask the Tax Lady with Esther Gulius and EG Tax on News Radio 930 WBEN. To reach Esther now, call 803-0930. Toll free at 1-800-616-9236. And cell calls are free at star 930. And now, live from the WBEN studios, it's Esther Gulius.
We're all concerned and fearful about those kind of things that have to do with privacy. And I have a special guest that's going to talk to us about embezzlement. But in the meantime, I have Christopher Fabian here in studio with me. Christopher, hey.
Hello, Esther.
Hey, we wanted to talk about identity theft before we introduced John Dosher, who's the former assistant district attorney in the city of Buffalo, where he's going to talk about embezzlement. But we want to talk about identity theft. And if you're somebody that maybe you aren't getting your refund and you're wondering, why the heck am I not getting my refund? Or you got this letter and you think, I don't understand what they're even talking about in this letter. You may be a victim of identity theft, right?
Oh, yeah, we're seeing a lot. I mean, we saw it during tax season where we send returns to the IRS electronically and they reject because their primary Social Security number or spouse's Social Security number was already claimed by somebody else. The return was already filed. And people will look and ask, what do you mean? How can my return already be filed? Because someone already used it. They were playing on the computer, got your social and your name, and sent a return. Now,
it's interesting. It's interesting. I looked at some statistics here on identity theft. In 2012, the average number of U.S. identity theft victims was 12,157,000 people. So it's not a small problem. And I'm going to tell you, if you're somebody that's concerned about your identity, and especially with John here, we're talking about embezzlement. I mean, with whoever it is that's calling people and saying, "Come on, you got to give us money, or we're going to come arrest you," and they're embezzling $5,000 and $6,000 and $10,000 from people. I mean, this is a real theft. You have to be, to be forewarned is to be forearmed, right?
Yep. You have to pay attention. You got to watch everything. You got to see what's happening with not only your credit, but your credit is the best place to start to see if someone has any information on you, because very easily can they take it and, they're smart. They're going to do stuff for like $1 at a time just to see if you catch it.
Well, isn't it an interesting thing? The other day, I was checking our bank account and we had like 2 small charges for like 30-some and $15. Yep. And I called up the bank and I said, I want to stop payment on this. I think it could be identity theft. I mean, the truth is you really need to monitor your accounts, because there are people that are doing nothing all day long but figuring out how to get yours to make it theirs.
Yep. Oh, definitely. They love to take what's not there. It's the easy way. Why work for it? I have relatives who went into an assisted living, and the week after their power of attorney got notified by some credit cards that they applied and spent $2,300 at Victoria's Secrets, and they're 80 years old. So I don't think they're
not really into Victoria's
Secret. No. But it's just how they it's really sad what's happening out there right now.
I'm telling you. And so if you're somebody that wonders what to do, maybe you think that something doesn't feel right, something smells fishy, and you're wondering about what to do, this show is kind of devoted to it. In the meantime, if you're somebody that hasn't gotten your refund, if you're calling the IRS and you don't understand what's happening, or the other day, for instance, I had a client that said to me, "Gee, I just got a $240 refund. I think you made a mistake." Well, we had filed an amended return, and New York State hadn't processed it, and the amended return he owed $240. They sent him back the $240, and I said, "Well, they haven't processed it, so we need to send that money back, or else they're going to penalize you." And he says, "Why should they be penalizing me? It's not my fault." But unfortunately, you have to be really smart with these situations, because it's very difficult. You want to make sure that you know what you're doing, because it seems like the people that are processing things don't do things in the timely fashion that we would like them to do.
Not to mention the scams
Right.
that are going on with the IRS.
All right, I'm Esther Gullius, the tax lady from EG Tax, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on the cell phone. We'd love to hear what you have to say. We're talking about taxes. We're talking about delayed refunds. We're talking about identity theft. We're talking about embezzlement. If you think you're somebody that's been a victim of one of these kind of things, we would love to have you become part of our conversation. We're especially thankful for John Dasher, who's the former assistant district attorney in the city of Buffalo. And John, we want to thank you for coming in and joining us on a Saturday. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
And John is a longtime friend of EG Tax, a wonderful friend of ours. He's helped us to put many people that were doing not so good things where they should be. He's prosecuted people, and he's devoted his life to kind of like Captain America, right? Don't you think you're like Captain America?
Thank you.
I think John is Captain America.
He even helped us when someone stole from us.
That's true. And we were a victim of embezzlement. It's interesting when somebody takes something that doesn't belong to you, and they're making it their own. That's embezzlement. And John was there to help us. It was interesting because the bank was calling us one day and said, "Aren't you guys accountants?" Yes, we're accountants. Why is it that your deposits are all so wrong? Oh, well, because the team that we had hired to pick up our deposits and deposit them in the bank, they were taking them and making it their own.
Depositing it
and
in
we
their
called
bank.
on the services of Mr. Dasher, who really helped us. So John, you're committed to helping people who've been victims of embezzlement, right?
Yes, I was in the Erie County DA's office, White Collar Crime Bureau, for 26 years. The last 14, I was the bureau chief in charge of white collar prosecution. Embezzlements were always a plurality of our cases. They were always, if you allow the expression, our largest stock in trade. We had many other different kinds of cases, but that was always our biggest category of cases. And all embezzlers pretty much live by the same ethic. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine.
and they don't have to pay tax on it too, right?
Oh, well, they're supposed to, though, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
anything illegal is taxable income as well. I'm Esther Gullius, the tax lady, 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on your cell phone. If you have any embezzlement issue, if you're wondering about identity theft, if you're somebody that hasn't gotten your refund, if you're having problems with the IRS, and I'm going to tell you we all are, you can give us a call in studio, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. We're going to take a short break. This is an opportunity to talk to a great guy who is committed to helping people not be railroaded by somebody that is doing something illegal, and this is your opportunity to talk to John Dasher, and we'll join you on the other side with your phone calls. See you in a minute.
Okay.
After midnight.
It's after midnight, and
It's actually at 3:19, but it's not after midnight. I'm Esther Gullius, the tax lady, and we are in the middle of our off-season series, and today we have a special guest, John Dasher, who's former district attorney in the city of Buffalo, and he is a embezzlement specialist. We want to talk about things that you're afraid of. I mean, are you afraid of having your identity stolen? Are you somebody that really thinks twice about a special sales pitch that somebody might be giving you to take your money? I think you should be. It's interesting. I was looking at some embezzlement statistics. The amount of money stolen annually from U.S. businesses is in excess of $50 billion. Annual percentage of annual revenues lost to theft or fraud is 7%. Percentage of employees who have stolen at least once from their employer, 75%. Percentage of employees who have stolen at least twice or more from their employer, 37.5. It's just really interesting. And I'm somebody that stays up in the middle of the night. I watch American Greed. I watch all these things where moms and dads are sold a bill of goods and they give money to somebody who's really not going to put their money into an investment, but they're using it as a Ponzi scheme. I mean, John, is that some of the things that you've run across in your career?
Yes. One of the kinds of embezzlement cases we have are investment scams, and that's a particular kind of embezzlement case. And many investment scams are run as a Ponzi scheme. It's something that from the very start is doomed to failure, can't possibly work in the long run, but in the short term it works very well for the person running the Ponzi scheme.
And it happens here in Buffalo. I mean, obviously you ran it. I mean, this is something, Buffalo, everybody thinks Buffalo's so small it doesn't have, but it is very common here.
Yes. Two investment scamsters that I remember in particular. One was a Ricky Heft, and he got 5 to 15 his second time around, and the other was a Paul Muccigrosso. He got 4 to 8. And
what did he do, John?
They both
What did you guys do?
essentially lived off of the money that was given to them.
But why? What kind of a story did they tell to somebody that somebody would turn over money to them?
That the money was going to be invested on behalf of the person giving the money. It was going to bring in a high rate of return. Within our bureau, we used to have kind of a gallows humor joke. We used to call it the usual 18%. It was a percentage that in the real world couldn't possibly happen, but that's what attracted people.
And you said, John, that's like a short term. They can't do it for very long, right? You said it doesn't usually go into the distance, right? Ponzi schemes.
Right. But to try and extend it, what the investment scamster would often do is send out what appears to be a very official-looking monthly statement saying you're getting 17.873%, and this quarter you have gotten exactly X amount of interest on your investment, and your entire amount, principal plus interest, now amounts to X. The truth is, your money is long gone. It was spent on, trips to the Caribbean.
Wine, women, and song.
Wine, women, and song a long time ago.
And it probably starts folding up when people say, I'd like some of my money now.
That's when it always comes apart.
So John, how is it? I mean, how do these people get a hold of people that would be vulnerable? I mean, so what is it that somebody needs to watch out for to make sure that their money is not going to become part of this kind of Ponzi scheme thing?
If it's too good to be true, it isn't true.
Yeah.
And embezzlers, especially investment scamsters, come across very well. They make themselves very likable. Being likable is the most important, the most essential weapon in the attack arsenal of a scamster. One of the people I was just talking about was at a church. He was in charge of the finance committee at the church. He taught CCD at the church. And so when people saw him, they said, well, here's somebody who's a trustworthy person. If they had some extra money for some reason through an inheritance, they gave it to him to invest. He put it into his personal account, and he immediately spends it.
So is there anything that somebody can do? Now, I know you're starting a brand new company to make sure that you can help people so that this doesn't happen to them. So how is there a filter that people can go through before they write that check to somebody and they hand over their entire life savings? I know sometimes, like for instance, on American Greed, you'll see somebody where these people have no problem taking every dollar of a retiree's portfolio that he worked their entire life, that they need to live on until they go on to glory. You know, these people have no qualms about that. So how is it that what red flag would somebody see? I know you said if it's too good to be true, but how is it they make it look too good to be true?
Could you make sure they're licensed accordingly, or does that help?
One thing is if the interest rate that's promised is far beyond what anyone else is offering. It's the story basically has everything but once upon a time when the cow jumped over the moon. Beyond that, I think it's best to go with some large company. They are responsible for the criminal misconduct of their employees. If one of their employees goes south, and that sometimes does happen, the large company is on the hook. The investment victim will get his money back. That large company must repay. So another thing that personally I, just speaking for myself, would do is to avoid anyone who is a single practitioner, self-proclaimed investment advisor. To become an investment advisor as a solo practitioner, all you have to do is decide you're an investment advisor, and put out a shingle, and there you are. Personally, I would avoid that myself.
So, okay, but if they're affiliated with something like American Express, is that, I mean, in other words, if I'm a solar practitioner who says that I'm doing business with, Dewey, Cheatham and Howard, whoever it is, I mean, is that a red flag, or do you have to make sure that this person really is affiliated? I mean, so you're saying that the person giving the money has to do their own due diligence. They can't just kind of like say, wow, this sounds too good, let's write them a check.
Right.
Now, is that something like that you're going to be doing with your new firm?
Well, one of the things that I liked best about working in the DA's office is that I was able to help get people their money back. That was the great thing about white-collar prosecution. It was the only area of prosecution where after the fact I could help people get their money back. Now that I'm retired, I'm hoping that I can use my knowledge to help people in a somewhat different way, which is to help people not become the victim of embezzlements to begin with. So I have a website called preventembezzlement.com. And after 26 years of chasing embezzlers, I have a talk I can give to a company that I believe will help them to greatly reduce the chances that they're becoming the victim of an embezzlement. Nothing can prevent that altogether, but the chances can be greatly reduced.
So does somebody just wake up one day and say, gee, I think I'm going to rip everybody off? I mean, when you look in the psychology, there's got to be, you got to have seen the psychology of people that are doing this. I mean, do you think that they set out trying to rip people off?
No. What I found as a white-collar prosecutor was that most, not all, but most of the people that we prosecuted were more good than bad. Very often, for instance, if it was a woman secretary or a bookkeeper, she was a Cub Scout den mother. She was a good mother to her children, good wife to her husband. She went to church on Sunday, and she took good care of her elderly mother. And on the side, she took $300,000 from her company. You can't have everything. I think what happens is people take a little, expect they can give it back someday, and one day they realize they'll never be able to give it back, and it just continues. Generally speaking, we found two reasons for embezzlements. About a third of them were due to gambling. Once the local casinos came online, the number of our embezzlements and the size of our embezzlements went way up, which proves that the people who were in favor of the casinos were right. Remember, they promised that the casinos would provide jobs, and they have, because the people in the DA's office have a job, and the judges and the defense attorneys, they all have jobs, and the prison guards have jobs. So the other two-thirds of the embezzlements were due to greed. People having Chevrolet incomes and Cadillac tastes, or sometimes roller skate incomes and Rolls-Royce tastes.
I'm Esther Gulius, the tax lady from EG Tax. We have a special guest this week talking about embezzlement, identity theft, John Doscher, and we're going to take a short break for news. Join you on the other side, 8030930, star 930 on a cell phone. See you in a minute.
Celebrate.
Hey, is that celebrate?
Yep.
I'm going to celebrate. I'm Esther Gulius, the tax lady. Hey, Tiffany, it sounds like you're in studio.
Yeah, I've been here for
Almost
The whole thing, almost.
I
Yep.
think you were stuck in traffic.
I
I'm Esther
was.
Golias, the tax lady. 8030930, 8030930, star 930 is cell phone. We have John Dosher here, former assistant district attorney from the city of Buffalo. I mean, he put bad people where they should go. If you're somebody that's afraid about having your identity stolen, maybe you think somebody has misappropriated your funds, we want to give you an opportunity to talk to him directly. 8030930, star 930 is cell phone. And we have Sam, who's been waiting patiently. Hey, Sam, how can we help you? Hello, Sam.
Sam. Well,
I
why don't we put him back on hold and we'll see
Esther,
if we...
I wanted to ask
Yeah.
John Dosher
Yeah.
a question. I was curious, John, there's all these companies coming out like LifeLock and Identity Protect. What do you think about those companies? And should somebody invest in spending the monthly fee to get a company like that on board with their finances?
Probably money well spent.
Okay, gotcha.
You know, in the middle of the night, I have no idea, but I wake up from 2 to 3 every night. It's just like a weird person. And in the middle of the night, I watch all these programs that talk about hackers and things of that nature. And it's interesting. You know, you have to really be diligent about who you give your money to. Isn't that true, John?
Yes, otherwise it's not going to be your money anymore.
And really, with embezzlement, what's the percentage if somebody really took your money? How
much
often
money?
did you really ever get any money back for them? I mean, I guess the only thing is finding out that somebody was a crook, right?
Our first job was to flag and tag the embezzler through a conviction. This person now has a criminal record. But very close to that, our second job was to try and make the victim whole. And frankly, that's why people used to come to us.
Yep.
They wanted their money back, and who wouldn't?
Yeah.
For cases that I handled, on the average, and you know, there was a lot of variation here, but on the average, people got back about 35%.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's something.
Right.
Yes, it's the only area of crime where after the fact you can undo at least some of the damage. But it's still not a great deal. Somebody takes $1 from you and gives you back a quarter and a dime. You're not back where you were, which is why people need to do the kinds of things that can be done to try and prevent this in the first place. If ever,
And that would be what?
well, one of the things that people need to do is to have an outside audit once a year. To not do it is penny wise and pound foolish. When people inside the company know that there's an annual external audit, it helps them to remember thou shalt not steal. It's like the old expression, trust but verify.
Yep. Yep.
Another thing people need to do that we saw was to not retain an employee who has been caught stealing a small amount of money. At one time, I myself was handling 4 cases where an employer had kept on an employee who had been caught stealing a small amount of money, and sometime later came to find out that the employee had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. Forgiveness is great in personal life, but in business it just doesn't seem to work. The most important thing that I would say to people, to a company, is, if you can remember just one thing, it's this: have an employee theft insurance policy and have it be with a sufficient cap. Because getting the money back is otherwise sometimes almost impossible. When I started chasing embezzlers in 1988, most companies, most victim organizations did not have an employee theft insurance policy. I even once, when asking the representative of an organization if his company had one, I was told the following: do we have an employee theft policy? Yes, of course we do. Our policy is we catch you stealing, we fire you. And that's not
But you're
what...
talking about an insurance policy.
Right, an insurance policy. Now the problem is not that companies or organizations don't have them. The problem is that they have them with far too low a cap. They have an employee theft insurance policy with a $15,000 cap, and then they lose $200,000. Well, that's fine for 5%. What about the other 95%?
Right.
And then, John, I
So,
was.
John-
oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, Tiffany.
You know, you were saying about 1/3 you can get back, obtain back of what was stolen. How about car cases when people have their automobile stolen? What is the percentage? I mean, you write down that that's a type of embezzlement, and so speak on that.
When somebody has his car stolen, if he has theft on his insurance policy, we all know that what you're going to get back from the insurance policy isn't what it's going to cost you to get an equivalent car. The moment you drive it off the lot, you've lost thousands of dollars. The bureau I headed handled car cases, though, also in a different way. We handle a lot of insurance fraud cases, and a lot of those insurance fraud cases were what we used to call owner give-ups.
Yeah.
That is,
Yeah.
an owner didn't want to have the car anymore or pay for the car. He'd pay for someone to off the car so he'd get the cash from the insurance company.
I
Gotcha.
can't believe that, John. You mean people actually hired people to steal their cars?
Right here in River City.
I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady. 8030930, 8030930, star 930. We have John Dosher, our special guest. We're talking about people being bad and doing bad things with your money. And we have Marie on a cell phone. Hi, Marie. How can we help you?
We came home last night, and there was a message on our answering machine from a lady saying she was calling for the IRS.
Oh.
Excuse me. That's the Internal Revenue Service, in case we didn't know. And they've been trying to get a hold of us for a long time, and they wanted us to know that they are going to initiate, I can't think of the word now.
Criminal actions.
They're going to, a lawsuit. They were going to initiate a lawsuit against us.
Mm-hmm. Do
Now, we have our
you owe any
taxes
money,
done
Marie? Marie, do you know of any money that you owe the IRS?
No.
Okay.
And we
so,
have our
Chris, you want to
taxes done by
tell
taxable
everybody
people.
about what's happening with that?
Yep. Now, Marie, do not call, do not pass go, and do not send them money. Okay.
Oh, no, I wouldn't.
Yep. This is totally fraud. They're scamming people. They're scaring people. Hate to say it, but elderly people more so than not. To hurry up and give them $4,000, $5,000, and they'll take it and run. It is not the IRS. The IRS does not call people. The IRS
That's what I thought.
sends letter after letter, and then they send the certified letters before they start seizing your bank account.
Right,
So,
and they still don't call you up. They don't call you on the day they're seizing your assets. They just go to the bank and seize your assets. They don't need your permission. The IRS doesn't call you and say, give us money or we're going to come pick up your husband. The IRS, if you really had an outstanding liability and you had gotten the 30, 60, 90-day letters and you had ignored them all and there really wasn't a liability, then they don't call you up. They just garnish things, see? So the IRS does not call you on the phone.
And John,
So,
correct
John,
me.
that's a form of embezzlement,
Yeah,
is it not?
but I was going to say that's probably harder to touch on because that's a lot of times people in different countries. Am I right?
Yes, the problem there is anonymity. This is something that with our electronic communications age happens more and more. It's a way of stealing money from people and never allowing your fingerprints to be put on the process.
yeah, I know the one time because I even got these phone calls, and I called one time from the office, and on another line I had someone on the phone with the local FBI saying, well, maybe they want to do something if they want to try to trace the line, because I could keep that conversation going for a while because
Yeah.
they didn't know I knew taxes.
And I think
and they
that-
said there's nothing we can do.
A really troubling thing is we had somebody send somebody money who got one of these
Yep.
calls like Maria, and then the hard part is getting the money back from that point. So like Chris
I mean, you
said,
almost can't get the money back
Yeah.
in that situation. I mean, because these are offshore accounts, right?
Right.
Yep.
You're not going to get the money back. You've got a better chance of being kidnapped by space aliens.
Now, on your website, preventembezzlement.com, is that where people, like business owners, they can go and they can get information how to prevent it, or is it how to contact you? What's on your website for people to help them?
It basically lists kind of services I can provide to people. It invites people to ask me to come to their company and speak to them on specific things that they can do to minimize the chance that they're becoming the next embezzlement victim. There have been times when I've been driving down the road. My wife has been at the wheel so I could look on both sides of the road. And in the space of a mile, I have pointed out to her 4 places that I know of that had embezzlements. I'll say where up. They had an embezzlement. They had an embezzlement. They had an embezzlement. Sooner or later, it happens to pretty much everybody.
Yep. And probably one of the best pieces of advice you can give business owners, too, besides doing an audit, like you said, was be involved in your books. Look at your bank account. Do your banking. Go over it. Just because you have someone who does it for you, you should review it also,
It's
right?
true. I always tell my bookkeeper,
Accountability.
who I work, my bookkeeper that does our own books, I work very closely with our bookkeeper, and I tell them it's your job to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do, because if you get lax, what'll happen is Susie might need some money for her milk tonight. And so she'll take the deposit and say, I'll borrow $10 and I'll put it in next deposit. The next day's deposit, nobody found out she didn't put it in. She might need pretty soon it's $300 or $400. Susie can't do it. Now it's a big problem. And so really keeping that short chain on what an employee should do really is doing a service to them.
And then I think even more important, John said, is let the rest of the staff know that you keep an eye on it, because I think we all know Esther keeps an eye on it, and I think it's important for the staff to realize that, right, John?
Because it keeps them safe. It helps them not to want to do something bad.
Right. All of our embezzlements start out with precisely that problem. It's one person's job, only one person's job to watch the money, and it's nobody's job to watch that person. Once you have internal controls, the chances of there being an embezzlement are radically reduced.
I remember last year, I think I was working with you on a bookkeeper at a church. I mean, who would think the lady at a church taking care of the church's money would be stealing the money? But she was, right, John?
Yes, we've had some of our largest embezzlements from churches. As John Dillinger once said, after all, that's where the money is.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the Catholic churches, they found a lot of the ushers who do the weekly collections were found taking money for themselves.
Yes, that was, if you allow the expression, the penny ante theft. We've had multiple thefts in hundreds of thousands of dollars from Catholic parishes in the greater Buffalo area. We've had just to mention a few of them. There was Our Lady of the Lake in Hamburg, St. Christopher's in Tonawanda, Our Lady Help of Christians in Cheektowaga, St. Andrew's Parish in Kenmore, Most Holy Redeemer. The list kind of goes on and on.
Well, you know, it's really interesting because a lot of my clients say, on our way to church on Saturday, we listen to Ask the Tax Lady, so some people are crashing into telephone poles right now on their way to Most Holy Redeemer.
Yes.
I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady. We're going to take a short break. If you've been somebody that thinks that something rotten is in Denmark, this is the place to call. We have our special guest, John Doscher, former district attorney from the city of Buffalo, started a brand new company to help you if you think you might be a victim of identity theft or embezzlement specifically. 8030930, 8030930, star 930 on your cell phone. We'll see you on the other side.
Yep, I believe you're right.
I got a something woman. There's something about hot
Black Magic Woman by Santana.
Hot magic.
Black
Okay.
Magic Woman.
Black magic. Well, whatever. At least I'm like 3 for 3 today.
You're on fire.
I am on fire. I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady. 8030930, 8030930. We're talking about your money and really how you have to be. You know, it's a sad thing to think that you have to think of somebody in such negative terms like this might be a con artist, John, you know? I mean, it just isn't something we want to think about. You got this guy, you really like him, he sounds so good, he's offering so much money, you're getting less than 0.25% in the bank, this is my retirement, you know? It just makes you feel bad that you have to think like that about
The most
people.
important thing is they have to be likable, right?
Right, and you got to be careful, otherwise it isn't your retirement anymore, it's his retirement. and what he's done with your money is he's retired to a castle in Portugal.
Right, right.
Anyway, if you're somebody that, and I will tell you, at EG Tax, we've had the messenger that stole money from us. We've had tax preparers that stolen money from us. And now it's never been a lot of money. John, you've been there. I mean, you've helped me with my clients, like the church that the pastor was thinking the bookkeeper was making the mortgage payments, and it was making her gambling debts. I mean, you just really have to look at everybody askance. You have to, it's interesting. We had one of our employees this year who didn't make her deposit, and we kept calling her, "Where's your deposit? Where's your deposit?" And she said, "I've been with you for 15 years. I can't believe it." But you know what? You have to hold people accountable. And I guess if somebody's really mad at you, maybe that's a clue to what's really going on.
Would it be okay to ask? John has written down a list of some cases that he's prosecuted, and you said 3 of them were tax cases. Can you talk about one of those, John? I was curious. You wrote down there were tax cases that you had prosecuted?
Yes. Generally speaking, our bureau would prosecute a number of different kinds of tax cases. There were sales tax cases, and there were tobacco tax cases. Thirdly, there were people who would put in for refunds that they weren't entitled to, and there would sometimes be rings on that. And in fact, I think I saw something in the paper today where the feds got somebody on that. Very often, though, and as it here relates to embezzlements, we would have what we call add-ons. We would have people who would steal out of money, and somehow they hadn't remembered to report that money on their relevant income tax returns as income that had come to them that year. So we would.
You mean like Al Capone?
Yes, exactly. And for instance, when Anthony Frangione stole $1.5 million from the Catholic Diocese of Buffalo. During the 80s, I prosecuted him in 91, 92, we also got him on a tax charge because he hadn't reported any of that. That was an add-on. Sometimes the add-on is a stronger part of the case. We had a lawyer who stole $44,000 from an old lady. She was in her 90s. She didn't know from Tuesday anymore, the poor woman. And it would have been hard for us to establish that she had not, in fact, given consent. But unfortunately for the lawyer, he told us that this was income to him that he had earned from his work for her, and then we were able to establish he never reported it. So that's how we were able to get him to plead guilty. He wound up having to pay all the money back. It was $43,800, and he wound up being disbarred.
So, John, do you think that people really, if in their heart of hearts is worried about maybe they are in bed with somebody financially that they are worried about because, 1 and 1 is making 12 and it isn't making any sense, that sometimes they're reticent to investigate it because they almost don't want to know?
Yes, knowledge may be virtue, but sometimes ignorance can feel like bliss.
Yeah, I was watching a 20/20 the other day, and there was a great big roofing company, and they make, not around here, they made lots and lots and lots of money, and the husband didn't know, the wife was doing the books, and she hadn't paid income taxes to $1.4 million, something like that, and the IRS kept writing her and writing her and writing her, and they said, we want to talk to the husband, we want to talk to the husband. Anyways, it was a day before the meeting, and the husband died. Because she didn't want her husband to know that, you know what I mean? And
she killed him?
Yeah, she killed him. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Sometimes that's a little radical.
Right. Sometimes people don't want to know, and so you got to pay attention.
Anyway, I'm Esther Golias, the tax lady. We got Jack. We don't know where Jack's from. Hi, Jack. How can we help you?
Yeah, John, I was just wondering. I read in the paper a lot where these people get arrested for embezzling. And the judge and the defense attorneys always use the same old excuse, it's the old gambling disease. They can't stay away from the casinos. The judges always buy into this. They end up giving them probation, maybe community service, with the understanding that they pay some of the money back, which they probably never do because the money's already spent. Are these judges naive, or are they just playing the game with the defense attorneys? You're not going to get anything done. I'm not saying they should do 5 or 10 years in jail. Give them a year and a half, where it'll get out that you're not going to take this embezzling nonsense anymore. But the way the judges handle it, they walk in, they have the court case, and they walk away, and they, and that's it. That's the end of it. I can't understand that. The judges can't be that naive to buy this.
Well, what's happened over time is that judges have come to see it your way. I chased embezzlers from 1988 to 2014, and what I saw is that over time there was a massive shift in the attitude of the judges here in Erie County towards people committed large white-collar crimes. They didn't used to go to jail, now they do. We've seen similar changes with respect to DWI. It was considered at one point not to really be a crime at all. When people were first convicted, they got no jail. Now when somebody who has been driving drunk has terribly damaged or killed somebody, that person goes to jail. We've seen that massive change with respect to domestic violence as well. It didn't used to be considered a crime. Now it's a crime, and people are prosecuted accordingly. We're seeing that massive change also very topically with respect to how cases are handled involving an allegation of police misconduct, abuse of force. So over time, public attitudes change, and when the public's attitude changes on something, the attitudes of the judges are reflected reflect those changes, and people wind up getting sentenced accordingly. I have to tell you that over time, I saw more and more stiff jail sentences being given out to people who had committed large white-collar crimes.
Oh, that's great. So that's a wonderful change.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a follow-up question real fast. When they're supposed to pay this money back, do they pay it back?
Money comes from a number of different sources when it's paid back at all. As I say, on the average, it's about 35%. Most of all, it comes from any place, from the employee theft insurance policy. It can also come from what's technically the defendant, but the defendant has already spent the money. The defendants are not interested in stealing. I only ever prosecute one kleptomaniac. What they're interested in is spending. So as soon as they have the money, they spend it. Sometimes they've spent it before they've stolen it. So the money, if it comes from the defendant, comes from friends and family. That's what we used to call the friends and family plan.
Not talking cell phones.
No, we're not. Sometimes the money can come from a 401k that the employer is holding, and the employer can be slow about paying back until the whole restitution issue can be resolved, so that that money can be put towards restitution. If the defendant is still working, the defendant can pay on the installment plan at least part of the money through what we call a restitution order. There is also a provision of the Internal Revenue Code which allows companies to take a deduction for all thefts discovered in a particular year. So there are various ways that people can get partial amounts back. But again, altogether it only adds up to maybe 35% on the dollar, which is why I hope to be able to help companies prevent being the victim of an embezzlement to begin with.
Oh, that's great. And I want to just thank you, John, because, I mean, personally, we respect what you do because you've really been an advocate in our quarter when we've had problems. And, you know, the more people that are watchdogs, so to speak, the better it is, because if there is, what did they say, absolute crime, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you have nobody watching over you, it's just exactly like you say, who knows? And it just gives people the opportunity. So if you're somebody that thinks that maybe things don't smell right, you're wondering about, maybe you're a small business and you would like to talk to John about embezzlement to make sure that your company doesn't become a victim of this, how would we get in touch with you, John?
Again, my website is preventembezzlement.com. That will give anyone who looks up that website an email address that can be used to contact me, and I will be glad to work with anyone who would like my help.
Well, until next Saturday, I'm Esther Gulias, the Tax Lady, with Tiffany Fabian, Christopher Fabian, and our special guest, John Dosher. We thank you for your time. We'll see you next Saturday. Have a great week. Bye-bye.